Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So, Lightwish had recently contacted me asking me if I would be interested in trying their UV resin, so I said I certainly would. And so they sent me these two huge bottles. I think they're 200 mLs each. And then they also sent me some resin pigments to work with. And it's their Starry Color series. Now, these are the darker colors that I chose. They have a lighter set as well. And you get 5 colors in here. It's a deep purple, a dark red, a deep gold, a dark green, and a deep blue. Now, these colors look amazing, and I can't wait to try them. However, we're not going to be playing with them today. What I want to do today is I want to make some coasters, kind of like a sun catcher, but not, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to take a little bit of my NYX Pro Crystal Clear Finish Resin, and I'm going to make just a thin layer on the bottom of these coaster molds. We're going to let this cure, and then we're going to come in with our sun catcher, I say in quotes, design. Now, I want to experiment with a couple different methods. So if you've ever tried to make a sun catcher before, I mean, I get sun catchers are supposed to be see-through, whatever. These aren't necessarily sun catchers, but it's just that type of design that I want to do. So I want to try 2 different ways of filling in the image. I want to use, for both ways, I'm going to do one with glitter, one with alcohol inks. For one of the ways, I want to use the gloss varnish that I use, and then the other way I want to try it with UV resin and see if there's a difference, if one works better than the other. Just so that we all know, if it's faster, whatever, and I know you can do it with 2-part resin as well, but for the sake of time, I'm going to use the UV resin today. Okay, so I have my image and the heart, and it's going to be a faceted heart. So, I want to give it that dimension, like it's an actual stone with the darks and the lights and all that good stuff. And I'm just using an outliner paint right now to go over all of the lines on this heart. Now, I'm not the greatest at using this outliner thing. This is probably the first time that I've actually used it, and it's actually turned out mostly good. I don't have the steadiest of hands when it comes to doing this, so my lines are slightly wonky, but it's okay. The one thing that I did notice with these is that in order for me to be able to get enough in, I did have to go over each one of these lines twice to just kind of build up that line weight and make it a little bit heavier, a little bit, taller, so that I could come in here with the resin and with the gloss varnish afterwards and, actually be able to put a decent amount in without having to worry about it going over the lines. Also, what I did was after I was done with the first layer of paint, I just took a toothpick, and any spots where I stopped the line and started the line that were kind of pointy, I did go over them and kind of smooth them out a little bit just to make it so that it's straight and it doesn't have a lot of, points and peaks and stuff on that. And then just going over it again. Now, for the sake of time, I'm not going to show you me outlining all 4 of them, just this one, because it does take a hot minute to do. But all in all, I like the way it turned out. Now, I'm sure there's many different ways that you can come up with the lines that you want to fill out, for your own sun catcher type thing. But this is what I chose to do. This is what I have. So that's what we're going to do today. And I went with a gold. Now, I do have copper and I do have silver, but I thought that gold would be best kind of for the color scheme that I want to go with, especially Valentine's Day. I don't know. Me personally, I just think gold is a lot richer. And you can just see that, I did build up these lines kind of thick. Now, you don't, when you're doing it, you want to make sure you're not dragging it. You're kind of letting it kind of just flow over top of your line so that you're not smoothing out that line. You want it to be built up. Okay, now on to filling it. We're going to start first with our gloss varnish. Now, I thought, I've got so much glitter, and I thought that I would have had more shades of red than what I do, but I don't. So I do have a deep wine red kind of like, it's a powder glitter that I'm going to use. I have this Solian extra fine ruby red glitter that I'm going to use. And then I have a chunkier red glitter that I'm going to use for the third one. I didn't have a light, medium, and dark like I was hoping. And so we're just going to go with what I've got. I mean, it is what it is. So I'm going with the darkest on the outside, and I'm just touching, as far as the darkest colors go, the darkest red, I'm just touching anything that is going on that edge. And then I'm going to go in with the chunky red glitter in the middle, and then I did the ruby red in the center because that's the lightest one kind of ish that I have. I mean, the two middle ones are really, really close, but I didn't think pink would look good, so we're going to go with this. You want to make sure that your glitter is kind of, you know, really packed in full, because I don't want a lot of clear showing through. It's a sun catcher style, but not a sun catcher. Okay, now going in with the chunky glitter, and just to kind of get it to go, because it is chunkier and it's not the fine, so it's not going to set in there nicely, I am using a toothpick to kind of push it around, push it down, and get it into any little spots, into all the corners. And hopefully I'm not going to have a lot of blank spots, but if I do, I will go back in and just cover it up with some more, just to make sure that I've got that glitter punched in really, really, really well. Then that's it for this one. We're going to be done. Now, you do want to make sure that you've got it all covered, so check it, because I've noticed, just like if you are doing resin and the resin doesn't kind of completely cover it, it'll kind of give you like those holes where it kind of spreads, and then you'll have that emptiness. The gloss varnish kind of does something very similar to that. Not so much with the glitter, I've noticed, but in this alcohol ink, it will. And you're going to see that later on. Doing the same thing using the gloss varnish, putting in the alcohol inks, mixing it to the colors to, you know, get as close as I can to what I've got going on with the glitters. And we're going to put this in. Now, this is where I'm talking about, if you don't put enough and you don't fill up those areas, it will, like, all of the color will kind of go towards the outer edges. It doesn't pull in, it goes out. So then you're going to have not necessarily empty spots, because you did color it, but it will be a lot lighter than the outside. So what I learned in doing this, and I only did it once, and again, you'll see the results later on. Like, it looks great here. Granted, you can't tell a lot of difference between the light and the middle color, but I set it off to the side to dry, and I didn't come back to it, and it pulled those colors. Even though it looked like it was completely covered, it wasn't, and I do have those light spots, so you may want to do 2 coats doing it this way. All right, on to our UV resin. Now, what I'm doing is I am mixing it, but because it is UV resin, I am doing thin layers, and I'm just going to do the whole thing over, you know, do all one time, but I'm doing very, very thin layers. So if it doesn't cover it this first go, that's fine, because I will put a second layer on here and kind of double up on it so that I don't have an issue with curing, because obviously we need that UV light to penetrate through. And I know I'm not going to get the color punched in that I want by just doing one, so we will do 2. So going in with the chunky glitter and the UV, and we're just going to put that in. And this is where it's going to not fill up completely because of the chunkiness. It doesn't go everywhere. It's fine. It's not a big deal. We'll go in with that second layer, and we're not going to have a problem with it at all. So I'm going to cure it for maybe a minute, 2 minutes, and then we'll come back over. We're going to put that second layer on, and we'll be done with this one. I really want to see which way, if it's going to be any difference in how they come out, you know, depending on the 2 ways. Like, if you have to do UV resin, if it makes it look that much better, or if the gloss varnish is just as good, you know, because not everybody has UV resin, or maybe they don't like to use it or whatever, and maybe two-part epoxy just isn't in the equation for them to want to do it, or like I said earlier, matter of time, you know, same thing. Now we're going in with the color, the alcohol inks, and I screwed up here, put the wrong color in. So once I realized it, I just did a quick cure on this so that I can go in with the darker color, because I didn't feel like wiping it all out. And yeah, I I had too many reds going on and I couldn't remember which one I did where. Going in with that second layer now on the glitter, and it's looking pretty good. And the UV resin, I didn't have it in there for very long, maybe, you know, a minute or whatever, and it did cure without any issues whatsoever. So that's a plus right now as far as this is concerned. And let's see how it comes out with the color. And yeah, we'll go from there. I always get nervous when I use colors and UV resin. The very first time that I ever used UV resin, I didn't know that you couldn't like punch in your colors. And I had a bracelet mold, so I tried to make a bracelet out of it. And I did like golds and purples or something like that with mica powders. And I mixed it like if I was using epoxy resin, and I cured it. And I thought that, you know, because the outside got hard, and I couldn't for the life of me, when I pulled it out of that mold and I had squishy goo coming out, couldn't figure out what I had done wrong. So ever since then, I've kind of got this like complex about putting colors in the UV resin that it's not going to cure and it's going to get gooey and all this other stuff. And it's just like, it's kind of really like affected how I think of it. So I'm really always like super like, oh, I don't know how much color I can add when I do this. So I don't do a whole lot with UV resin and color, but, you know, today's kind of like probably the most that I've ever used color and UV resin, like for real. All right, heart's all done. I think it looks fantastic. It's super shiny. The colors are really punched in there, and it's really hard. Now we're going in with our second layer of the alcohol inks and UV resin just to darken up those colors more and just get it more. Now, I did have an issue on the left-hand side. You can see me trying to clean it out where I overfilled over top of my lines, and it just, yeah. Okay, so here we are now. Here's the comparison, which one the resin is and the varnish. Now, on the glitter, you can see a little bit more on the resin side, how those colors are just brighter. And here we go with the varnish and the alcohol inks. Now you can see what I'm talking about, how that color pulled away towards the outer edges on some of those. I could have avoided this if I had gone in with a second coat, but I didn't want to do that. Now, if you chose to do that, you know, you most definitely could, and it would be a lot closer to the resin than not. But I think it goes to show that either way, you can do it and get away with it. You just may have to do, like I said, a second coat on the gloss varnish, which is no different than us having to do the two coats of the UV resin. Now, this could all be avoided if you wanted to use two-part, because then you can put in that color however you want. You just have to wait a lot longer for it to dry, and you wouldn't be putting on this top coat right now, you know, right after you're done. But you do have to wait for the gloss varnish to dry too, and I do give my gloss varnish 24 hours to dry totally, just to make sure that I don't have any moisture in there. So we put our Nic Pro Crystal Clear Resin as the top coat, and we're just going in. Now, I'm not going to fill these up the entire way. It's more for an experiment purpose than me actually using these as coasters or anything. So I'm not super concerned about that. We'll just kind of clean off any rough edges that we get when we demold. The one thing I did know I did have happen is that the glitter in one of them, even though I went over with my heat gun several times and tried to pull up any bubbles that I could possibly find, I did have some coming through like from the glitter in one of the pieces later on that kind of cured with some bumpiness on the top. If I had paid more attention, I could have prevented that, but I didn't, and it happened. So it it is what it is. It's an experiment, so it's not anything that I'm planning on actually using later on or selling or anything like that. I just wanted to see which one would work better, if it would make a difference, or, if they're very similar. And I feel like they're very similar. I'm curious to what you guys think. I think if I was to do it again, or if I was to do an actual, like a for real sun catcher, I feel like the gloss varnish may be the way to go, because if you look at it, since I didn't put that second coat on, where the color's not packed in, I feel like it looks more like a sun catcher. It just has that feel. However, if I was to do this for actually just, having the image not as a sun catcher, not as anything that needs to be see-throughy, if I was in a pinch for time, I think UV resin would be the way that I would go. If I wasn't in a pinch for time, I would probably just go ahead and use 2-part epoxy for it, simply because I feel like the colors you could pack in more. You don't have to spend the time and the worry of if it's going to cure or not cure, because you have those colors in too dark, or doing the multiple layers, making sure that there's enough room, because I mean, we're talking like it may be a millimeter worth of space on those lines. It's all up to you. Either way they work. It's just how much time you're going to spend on each one and what results you're looking for. I think all in all they came out nicely. It's just the look that I think, whatever you're going for. Okay, so 24 hours later, all nice and demolded. Now you can see what I'm talking about. You can actually see through this a lot more than I thought you could while it was in the mold. I think for this, for what I was going for this, I really believe that the resin was the way to go. Glitter, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference, except for the colors I feel are darker and more vibrant in the resin than they showed up in the gloss varnish. But, it's all in what kind of look that you're going for, So I don't think either one of them are horrible. It's just whatever look you're going for that particular project, I guess would be the best way to do it. So I'm just trimming up the edges right now, and I decided that filing would just be better than trying to use the deburring tool around all of these edges, because I have a hard enough time using it on a straight line, much less all these curviness. So quick file, and then we're going to go over, just to add a little something something to them and finish them off. I am going to go over them with my Deco Color gold pen, a thin line along both the bottom and top edges and around the side, just to kind of finish them off. I mean, you don't have to do this. You can do whatever you want. Finish them, not finish them. I just thought that they needed something, especially after, I did the nail file and filed them down some. I feel like at that point they do. The only thing I really don't care for when you are going over your edges is that if there's any little like bubble holes that come, like that get stuck on the side, and I did have some from the first layer of resin that I poured where they're stuck on there, I feel like it makes them more noticeable. Like, you may not have noticed that there's a few little air bubbles in there until I put the gold on. And then once the gold's on, I feel like they're just like, hey, look at me, I'm a bubble that you forgot, And that's my only issue kind of with putting the gold on, or any edging on any coasters. If you don't have, if it's not completely perfect and you have those little imperfections in there, that they just are magnified. That's my personal opinion. Anyway, that's about it on this one, guys. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. I will catch you guys on Saturday in the next one. Remember, all the links and discount codes for Lightwish and everyone else will be in my description box below. And I will see you guys later. Love ya. Bye.